to that being our district, we are making those times. We are getting to those areas, but there are some areas where it's a little bit further now. The city of Albuquerque in the last 10 years has grown by almost 22%, so there's been some major growth here, and we kind of need to start expanding our fire department in order to meet the times.
And I also, Madam President, if I may, want to commend the fact that I've never heard of anyone in that area saying that they did not get service or that they did not have a response that was within a time that they felt was necessary to either knock down a fire, save folks. One of the largest apartment building fires happened on Gibson near San Mateo, and it was taken care of almost immediately. So I also want to thank the fire department for that.
Thank you, Councilor Garduno. Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to follow up with what Councilor Garduno has just stated regarding the issue with the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Government Commission working on this initiative for one CAD system. I've been working on this for nearly 15 years, and it seems like the biggest problem that we are confronting, it's the jurisdictions of Bernalillo County and the city of Albuquerque. You know, I think that the board members all support one CAD system because I think it benefits the entire community. And when it comes to public safety, there should never be any boundaries. I mean, we should be working side by side with Bernalillo County to respond to these calls. And also, I want to thank you, Captain Soto and Mr. Arangon, for your work on this initiative. I think it's important that we take some of these recommendations into consideration. We have in the past, and I think it really has made a difference with the ladder truck that we now have on Albuquerque's west side. We have the new fire station, so I'm not sure, that's Station 7, and I'm not sure if the recommendations would apply to that particular stations. It states here an additional fire station should be built and staffed with a full-time engine near I-40 and Old Route 66. I mean, so that's where the new fire station 7 is going to be built, or is being built now. But I'm not sure if that was a location that this committee was looking for you know, the city of Albuquerque. Was that one of the recommendations, or would that suffice one of the recommendations? Station 7?
You want to take it? It will. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Again, thank you for all of your work, and hopefully we can, you know, look at these recommendations and make changes that will benefit the citizens of our community. You know, it does make for a safer community, and when people pick up the telephone and dial 911, they don't care if it's a county truck or a city truck. They just want that truck to respond to that call just as quickly as possible. And if we can get closer to the 4-minute times, I would try to recommend that. You know, now we're at the 8-minute times, and it, you know, seconds and minutes can mean a matter of life or death.
Yes, sir. It can, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Sanchez. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. So you have 4-minute rescue, and then you have 8-minute rescue, and in most cases it looks like the 8-minute response time. A lot of times you can meet that, except for some outlying areas. Would you explain the difference between, I mean, when you're talking about a 4-minute response time, what does that really mean to someone who is called? And, you know, the fire department, let's say someone has, you know, yes, someone has said, you know, I think my husband, or maybe I'm having a heart attack or something like that. What does that mean?
In NFPA 1710, Chapter 4 covers the response times for EMS calls. And that can be used also because it runs parallel with the fire suppression calls of 4 minutes and 8 minutes. In regards to your question, BLS calls, basic life support calls, we need to have one of our EMS units there within 4 minutes. That's what the NFPA 1710 standard calls for. As for an ALS call, advanced life support, the NFPA 1710 standard asks for an 8-minute response. So while the maps show fire suppression, they can also be used for EMS as well. So trying to make it a little bit easier. I know it's confusing. If you look at, you stated the rescue. Let's go to that map. And I'll put it right here on this 4-minute rescue. If you look at that, this is in regard to fire suppression. So the first fire suppression unit on scene per the NFPA 1710 must be there within 4 minutes. Also stated in NFPA 1710 is that if you have a basic life support call, you also have to have an EMS unit there within 4 minutes. So that's why we're covering the 4 minutes, is we're showing that because our rescues respond to both BLS and ALS calls, the BLS calls, they must be there within 4 minutes. That, and this map is showing that. And the following map on map 4 is showing 8-minute rescue responses. They can have an 8-minute rescue response in regard to a fire suppression. So if they are on a first full alarm dispatch and they're getting dispatched to a fire, they have 8 minutes to get to that call. It also works with an EMS call. If the call is an ALS call, they have 8 minutes to get to that call. So yes, if you're looking at map 4 and you see all that blue, yes ma'am, that's all the areas that our current paramedic rescue companies can respond to within 8 minutes.
Okay. I was just curious about the standards that someone must have come up with those based on, whether or not you can save someone's life, for example.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there enough time? Because minutes matter, that sort of thing.
If you go to page 34, ma'am, I can better explain that for you.
Okay. Let me just get this.
On page 34, we're talking about the chain of survival. In the chain of survival, if you go about halfway down the first bullet, if firefighters responding within 4 minutes of receiving an alarm initiate CPR, the probability of patient survival quadruples from 4.6% to 18.2%. If those same firefighters are equipped and trained to provide defibrillation, the expected survival rate is 5 times greater at 25.8%. Finally, if those firefighters are trained and equipped as paramedics, the survival rate is increased to 34.3%, nearly a 7-fold increase. And currently our rescues do have staff 2 paramedics. Now, if you would please go with me, and I will finish answering that question on page 42. On page 42, right in the middle, using Eisenberg's max percentages from the Eisenberg model. It was done in 1993 by the University of Washington on cardiac patients. This is the time on the studies. A 9-minute initial arrival time prior to pre-hospital emergency medical intervention gives the patient only a 1 in 15 chance of survival. And that's what we're talking about here. Time is muscle. We need to get these units. That's why we have these time frames. A 4-minute arrival by firefighters with the initiation of a CPR in 5 minutes increases the probability of patient survivability to 1 in 4. Firefighters delivering defibrillation within 6 minutes increases the probability of patient survivability to 1 in 3. Firefighters trained as paramedics and delivering cardiac medication within 7 minutes increases the probability of patient survivability to 1 in 2. And that's why we have time constraints. That's why we need to get there within the 4 and 8 minute responses to certain dispatches.
Okay, thank you. I just thought that was very important. I know that, we certainly have aging populations. There's concern there that we make sure that we get support for folks who, have a medical emergency, and as we try to get to them as soon as possible. So I was curious about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We're going to have a follow-up question from Councilor Gardeno, and I think, Ms. Mason, would you mind getting with them and see if we can set up a study session for the full council? Thank you. Councilor Gardeno.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to go back to page 8 in key findings, and you mentioned that the fire department at this point is not in full compliance. Could you expand on that? I think I understand what you mean, but why aren't we?
I'm going to yield to Diego.
Again, Madam Chair, Councilor Garduño, this is not intended to point blame. There's no one at fault here. This is just where we've come to through decades of budget negotiations, through other priorities. Fire service is always doing more with less across this country, and especially here in Albuquerque. We make do with what we have. But yes, in fact, that we are falling short from NFPA 1710, and I assure you that if the chief were up here, he'd be saying the same thing. This is a goal, and I think that we all need to come together and realize that to hopefully one day accomplish that.
And what I understand is it's a matter of one person difference. In other words, at this point, there are 3 on-duty firefighters that respond, but the fire suppression apparatus requires 4. So by cutting out one person, we're putting in danger and certainly not meeting the standard that we should be meeting by doing that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garduño, that is correct. However, when staffing does permit, we do have a practice of applying that fourth person on the ladder. It's not regular, it's not constant, but again, that's something that could be a budget priority for the future.
I really appreciate that. And sometimes, you know, we think that just by cutting one person, that it doesn't mean a whole lot. But I remember somebody explaining that that one person is probably the key to making that a successful fire response. And those are the kinds of things that I think we need to pay attention to when folks talk to us. Thank you, Madam.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garduño, page 37 for your information kind of goes into detail what your question is, and I implore the council to look through this in detail. If you have any questions, please call us. And thank you very much, Madam Chair, for offering the study session. I think that'd be very beneficial.
Thank you. And let's make it perfectly clear what Councilor Garduño said. That's not one person in the city. That's one person per unit.
Right.
Okay. Just in case there's any confusion there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice report.